After 1 month of scrutinizing the details of the budget presented by President Bola Tinubu in November, the National Assembly at a special plenary on Saturday passed the finance document, increasing the size of it from 27.5 trillion naira as proposed by President Tinubu to 28.7 trillion naira. The additions came largely from increase in the budget of the judiciary. The Ministry of Works also received additional 200 billion naira and an extra 100 billion naira was added to President Tinubu's school feeding program.
Along the line, while the budget, the consideration was going on, there are some of the findings, at some of our findings, a lot of agencies claim that they have been underfunded and they have a lot of programs to do which needs funds. And with their envelope that have been given to them, it becomes difficult for them to get anything done. And after this savings that was realized, it was sent to the executive to see what they need. And some of the first respondents, including the judiciary, who is asking for 171 billion additional funds, which was graciously approved by the executive and were given. Other agencies like Works was given about 200 billion, and Power agreed, Water Resources and housing and this were not left out in the distribution of this fund. And also the school feeding program, which the president is very passionate about.
The increase didn't come from National Assembly. It's come from exigencies of the executive. Not that National Assembly increasing anything. We don't have business with budget. And mind you, we cannot write budget for ourselves. So it's the budget presented by the executive. For instance, judiciary wants an increase to build more courts. Will you say you don't want to accommodate them? This is just what is happening.
As you know that we had an inflation and exchange rate for the dollar. The executive proposed 750 naira to the US dollars. But after we study carefully, we look at it like unrealistic. And because at the black market it's like 1,200, even official it's like 900. So we increased from 750 to 800. And also we had a meeting with the GOEs. We believe that their submission is not enough, so that they have agreed to increase their revenues to 700 billion. So when we increase that, we are able to get that to 1.2 trillion, which we applied in capital. For the oil benchmark, I don't think we had any changes for that, and it's not true. We didn't change any, But all I can tell you that this is the first time in the budget the capital is higher than recurrent. It's the first time. It's the first time actually. This will show you, Mr. President, and Nigerian will see massive projects in 2024.
In preparing the details of the budget, the National Assembly adopted a revised medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper FSP and settled for a benchmark price of crude oil at $77.96, slightly higher from $77.56 proposed by the executive. The National Assembly left the daily crude at 1.7 million barrels. The lawmakers, however, adjusted the budget exchange rate to 800 naira to $1 high from 750 naira. The National Assembly also left the GDP growth rate at 3.88%, with inflation pegged at 24.1%. A closer look at the budget, however, revealed a budget deficit of 9.18 trillion naira, with recurrent expenditure standing at 8.76 trillion and capital spending at 9.995 trillion naira.
The National Assembly deemed it very fit that those areas had to be given very, very concerned and very serious and pertinent priorities. So because of that, the component, that capital component, had been upped to 9.9 trillion instead of 8.7 trillion. That's an increase of about 1.2 trillion. So that is the major, very significant area where the National Assembly had to, due to the yearnings of Nigerians, due to the user cries that, look, our infrastructure is actually very debilitating, that it is in the ICU, in the intensive care unit, and it needs oxygen, And then in order to infuse that oxygen into it, we have to increase the appropriation to that sector. And so that is the only very difference that we can see in the appropriation as presented by the executive arm.
One fantastic thing they did was to adjust the exchange rate with realities that is on the ground from 750 to 800, which now gave us more funds. And those funds were committed to the new project that the president sent in to be able to take care of challenges that need to be dealt with. But the beautiful thing about this, for the first time, we didn't have any back and forth with the budget process in terms of, much visible changes. We worked in line with the vision of the executive because we strongly believe that the president have the best intention in solving critical national problems. And that was why I didn't see much of changes or environment or movements of some of the project that was expected. And that is why you're going to see the president is going to sign it very fast because it's almost 80% of what he projected to the parliament.
A substantial amount, put roughly at 7 trillion naira, is expected to be borrowed to finance the budget. This was as the National Assembly approved the borrowing of $7.4 billion for 2022 to 2024 external borrowing. It also approved another 100 million euro to be sourced from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the Islamic Development Bank. All of these was as the National Assembly tightens loopholes on revenue generation and calling for a probe of all waivers since 2015. The president is expected to sign the budget into law in the next 2 days to meet a January to December budget cycle. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Okay, let's cross live now to the Senate and speak to its spokesman, Yemi Adaramodu. Very warm welcome to News Night. And would Nigerians say congratulations for the speed with which you've used in passing the National Assembly has used in passing the budget. But the worry here is that you've jacked it up with over 1.2 trillion naira in a budget deficit that is going to read 9.18 trillion naira. How are you going to reconcile this, or how do you think the government is going to source this humongous budget now reading more than 28 trillion naira?
Oh, thank you very much, my great brother, and good evening, Nigerians. This budget of renewed hope, as presented by the executive under the watch of our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we think that this is a takeoff from even what we expect by the National Assembly. Because the National Assembly, especially the Senate, we think that even the budget of 28 trillion is still very paltry, very small, very not enough for Nigeria that has a population of about 200 million people. Because when we look at the budget provisions of other countries in Africa, when you look at that of South Africa, just of about 60 million people, the budget is an equivalent of about $132 billion. And that of Nigeria, with 200 million people approximately, is just a little bit above $33 billion. So definitely we will not say that we are now at the El Dorado. It is not yet so. But for what we have been having before now, and then for the situation that Nigeria finds itself now, especially the economic morass which we are going through today, we think that 28 or 29 trillion naira is a bit ambitious to take Nigeria to where we expect Nigeria to be, but it is a very good genesis that can take us to where we are going. Now, when you look at a budget, then when we talk about the deficit, and then we talk about the sectoral allocations, and then the components, especially the capital components, which the Senate and the House of Representatives have upped by 1.2 trillion. So it is very pertinent, it is very necessary. Why is it pertinent? Why is it necessary? We have to ensure, because when we met with the MDAs during the second reading of this budget, and then many other people, the public, when they came on board, they spoke about it. We exposed the MDAs to everyone to even ask questions. We even demanded for inputs from CSOs and critical stakeholders. And from that, we found out that there are some areas, there are some sectors that the federal government, despite the fact that they wanted to make sure that they do a lot to improve those sectors, that all the allocations there are not enough. Apart from the yearnings of those MDAs, for example, works. If we know that today, about 33,000 road network in Nigeria, kilometer road network in Nigeria. So when we look at them, how many of those roads network are even passable, apart from the new ones that are supposed to be constructed? So if we want to maintain these roads, if we want to retain them and we want to sustain them, definitely there must be a lot more to be allocated to the works department of the federal government, so that Nigerians, especially those ones in the rural areas, can do a very thorough haulage of whatever they have agriculturally to the urban areas or to the market areas, where they can get these things off the ground and then improving on their economy. And then even our dependence on either the airports through flights and the railways, which are not generally shared among the states and the sub-regions of Nigeria. So that is one area that we looked into.
Well,
this school feeding thing, because the school feeding, so these areas, are areas that are so pertinent that we have so these areas are so pertinent that we must ensure that we touch all the sectors. And then not only touching the sectors, we have to make sure that government makes very, very positive impact, lasting impact in these areas. Look at water and rural development. So we have to allocate more funds into these areas. Transportation, we have to allocate more funds into these areas, especially the railways, maintenance of the railways, the existing ones, and then the building fresh ones, without even going to anywhere to borrow money. So the issue of the deficit areas, whereby we have to source for some other sources of funding apart from the IGR that is coming from the various departments of government that are bringing in money to government to fund budgets. Then definitely some of those areas, we looked into them, we found out that Nigeria will not be put into serious indebtedness. One. Number two, we look at it that the conditions of even taking money either from World Bank or wherever is not going to be so excruciating to the point that Nigeria will not be able to breathe anymore. So these areas, because is there any country in the world whereby they will not just look elsewhere to search for funds, even soft loans? Even in some areas, we belong to so many, we have so many partnerships all over the world.
Yes, indeed, Senator Adaramodu.
There are reasons why Nigeria is in these partnerships, and then the reasons is part of it is for them to grant them some financial opportunities to be able to fund some of the development projects that are just coming up in their countries, and Nigeria is one of them.
Okay.
And so we will not stop the federal government from assessing these opportunities. So those are areas that we expect that we are going to allow the federal government to use as a supplement to what the federal government will realize from all other sources where the revenues will be generated.
Okay, Senator. I mean, you've said it that in one breath the budget is over ambitious, and in another breath, I don't know if the National Assembly considered Nigeria's debt portfolio or profile of close to 30 trillion naira, and here is a budget deficit again of 9.18 trillion, still borrowing and borrowing without any creative or realistic economic projections to shore up production activities in the country, the manufacturing sector is thinning out gradually. Multinationals are leaving and the rest. Where is all this money going to come from? From borrowings?
Now, for the first time, the capital component of the 2024 budget is almost at par with the current component. So it's almost 50-50. So when we now find, it has never happened in Nigeria before. It has, at times it will be 70% for the current and 30% for capital components. But now, today, the budget that we have just passed today, when you look at the percentage, it's almost at par. So if it is almost at par with that, it means that the components whereby those money that will be sourced from all these other sources, apart from the revenue that will be generated internally in Nigeria, then it means that these areas, if it is properly used, that are going to give life more abundant for Nigerians. That is number one. These are areas, for example, when we build roads, we know the multiplier effects of good road networks in Nigeria. We know that one. When there is good water supply, we know the effects in Nigeria, because it is going to reduce our overhead on health matters. Then when we talk about education, and for the first time in the history of Nigeria, when you look at the capital components, apart from the security sector, then we have the health sector, we have the education sector. For the first time in the history of Nigeria, then we have the poverty alleviation sector in Nigeria. And now, if we have all those, if we can keep faith with them, definitely whatever money we source from anywhere, from any source in the world, it means that it goes to where it's supposed to go. Because there is, like, personally, I look at it is that where money is, even if it is sourced internally, apart from external borrowing, if it is used for the benefit of our people, then definitely we would not say it's a bad.
The catch here from you is if it is used. That's what Nigerians are expecting from all the borrowings and the rest, and nothing really significant to show for the quality of life of the average Nigerian. Thank you so very much, distinguished Senator Yemi Adaramodu, spokesman of the Nigerian Senate, for coming on Newsnight.